My friends, the skills for Hermann Prime have been posted, and I'm told this was posted in the official Rise of Kingdoms WeChat account for the Chinese servers, because I think the Chinese servers are about one mightiest governor cycle ahead of the rest of us in the rest of the world in the international servers. So stick around in this video for the translation and evaluation of the Hermann Prime skills, which, yeah, they look really, really good. Let's talk about it. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and I always try to provide news and information about commanders as soon as that information drops. But I always stay away from leaks because leaks are definitely something that, as a content creator, it's very dangerous for me to talk about. Card will be up top and probably in the end screen if you want to see my thoughts on leaks and being a content creator and like music and the... Dude, being a content creator comes with so many challenges, but that's not what you're here for. You're here for a review of the skills on Hermann Prime. So subscribe if you want more news and information drops as soon as this kind of stuff lands. And let's get started with the information that, to the best of my knowledge, was published in the official Rise of Kingdoms WeChat account for the Chinese servers. The active skill on Hermann Prime does 2,000 damage factor to 3 targets, and it does a poison effect, and it has a 1,000 rage requirement. It's also called, I think, maybe Falling Angels Forest? No, that ain't it. The word forest probably is not right, but Falling Angels and the name of the skill is super important because there's actually a way this is going to trigger all over again. So remember this name, even though it's a little wonky with the translation. So what does it do? Again, 2,000 damage factor, up to 3 enemy units in a fan-shaped area. The damage does scale down based on hitting multiple targets, just like AoE normally does. And it applies 3 stacks of poison to the unit hit, and it lasts for 10 seconds. Now, I don't know if that's 3 stacks of poison to all 3 targets hit, or if that's like 1 stack per target, but I think it's 3 stacks on each target hit. Could just be the primary target, though, in fairness. AoE poison sounds absolutely insane. This effect can be stacked up to 15 times, which, as I said in a previous video about Hermann Prime, when we saw that he was going to potentially have some poison effects based on looking at the skills of Theo, revealing that, hey, wait, Hermann Prime is listed in the description of a poison effect. Anyways, I covered that separately. The point here is that poison works exactly the same it does for Tommy today. So each layer of poison will make the target take 3% more skill damage. So all in all, we have an active skill, I think, that's hitting 3 targets, 2,000 damage factor, and applying potentially 3 stacks of poison to each target, making each one take 9% more skill damage, which is pretty good, until they get more stacks. So let's look at how you get more stacks. Second skill, Germania. I believe this is the second skill. I don't actually know. The attack of archers is increased by 20%. Defense is increased by 20%. March speed by 15%. I mean, this is pretty standard sort of stuff you kind of need to see on any commander these days for them to be viable. A nice body of stats to work with. This looks great. From here, leader of the pack. When attacking troops, I think in the wild means in the open field, the skill damage caused by your own troops is increased by 20%. So you do 20% more skill damage. And when attacking a troop in the open field, I think it's when you're in the open field. I don't know if the troop needs to be in the open field. I think it actually does need to be an enemy that is in the open field, not a garrison. But when attacking a unit in the open field, for 2 seconds, I think after casting an active skill, the defense of the target is going to be reduced by 20%. Now, this is a very short defense reduction, if I'm reading this correctly. I think this is saying you have a chance to trigger a 20% defense reduction and it lasts 2 seconds. And this last part, I feel like, is translated really weirdly. It says the damage taken by archer units from cavalry is increased by 5%. Actually, that sounds right. So archers are going to take 5% more damage from cavs. That's bad. Okay, but we've seen this style of effect on other commanders like CJ in the past, so it's actually very believable. And the damage taken by archer units from infantry is increased by 5%. I think that's worded backwards. I think what they mean is archers deal 5% more damage to infantry. So in total, this skill is making it so your skill damage is boosted by 20% when you're attacking troops in the open field. When you're attacking troops in the open field, you have a chance to trigger a 2-second defense reduction. That's a 20% reduction. You take 5% more damage from calves. You deal 5% more damage to infantry. All right. Seems pretty good to me, right? From here, now we're getting back into the poison sphere. And like, this is the same thing on Tommy, where the 4th skill does poison stuff, right? So this says all damage taken from poison units is reduced. Damage reduction is the number of poison layers on the enemy times 1%. Wow. So you are taking reduced damage. Now look, this is kind of weird because I think this is your march taking reduced damage from poisoned marches. This is not a debuff onto the enemy, I think. I think this is just your march takes less damage from poisoned marches, and it's, again, 1% reduction per stack of poison, which is insane. And each of your basic attacks has a 10% chance of causing direct damage to 3 enemy units in a fan-shaped area. It's 200 damage factor. That damage does reduce based on the number of targets hit. And you put 2 more stacks of poison onto the targets. Oh, that's kind of cool. So you have ways to stack poison here, but it's not nearly as consistent, I would think, as Tommy is. Like, Tommy seems super consistent, single target poison applications. Here we have AoE poison applications, which seems really good, but we're not done yet. Because once you have deployed 25 stacks of poison, you activate your active skill all over again. The Forest of the Fallen Angels. Oh, see, that sounds like the right name. Forest of the Fallen Angels. So 25 stacks of poison, you get a free use of your active skill. This is going to kind of be like a Joan Prime situation where like every 2 skill cycles, you're getting a free use of active skills. And let me explain that. If you hit in your skill cycle 3 targets, you have now deployed, if I understand this correctly, an upwards of 9 stacks of poison. All right, 9 stacks of poison is pretty good. And then over here, if you're hitting 3 targets, here is another 6 stacks of poison. So 15 stacks of poison. And this could go faster, depending on if you get lucky. There is a cooldown window of 3 seconds on how frequently this can trigger. So you would expect like once every 13 seconds, this is not quite the right math, but I don't want to get into the actual math. This is some napkin math. But once every 13 seconds, you're going to hit them with this. So approximately once every 2 skill cycles, I think you're going to get the active skill all over again. Now, I recognize that this image is insanely blurry, and I do need to give a big shout out to Mountain Man, who's the dude who clued me into all of this. So big shout out to Mountain Man for getting the source of all this information and for getting me all this information. But here is the video, which makes me feel this is all very official, which is why, again, I don't deal in leaks. And if this is in any way a leak, yo, community managers of Rising Kingdoms, contact me. I will take this video down immediately, right? But like, here is the active skill of Hermann Prime. And it's like a poison lion, which like, I'm all about it, man. Looks cool. Looks cool. Also, the more important thing is that it looks like that's no fan-shaped area. Like, I wonder if what we're looking at here, I mean, I think, wait, we can read this, is that is the active skill described here. I was wondering if maybe this is an animation for the 4th skill, but it looks like this is the active skill, which is absolutely sick. So, hey, yo, Hermann Prime, it's going to be a freaking beast, baby. And guess who's coming back? Guess who's back in action? Tommy. I am not, like, unironically, Tommy is looking so good. Let's talk about that. All right, so we know that 25 stacks of poison means that you get a free activation of an active skill, which is insane. Free activations of active skills, by the way, depending on your talents, and I believe it's the support tree on Hermann Prime. Support tree has Rejuvenate. Rejuvenate gives you Rage. So a free activation of that should give you more Rage, right? And all the benefits that come with the use of an active skill. So what am I trying to say? Hermann Prime with Tommy seems like it could be very good. Why is that? Well, first of all, Tommy really needed a way for more stacks of poison to be deployed. That way, when you clear the stacks of poison, right, you get more effects. Now, the funny thing is that I didn't see a way for Hermann Prime to clear the stacks of poison. So on the one hand, you kind of don't want to clear the poison off because you want them to get more and more poisoned. On the other hand, Tommy could pretty consistently get closer to that 1800 damage factor when you have more stacks of poison onto the target. So that could be really good. But Tommy as a base model, all right, is already so good that Yoda 808 was using her in the open field and also for swarming garrisons. Why is that? Well, there's a passive effect here. 10% chance to trigger a 30% defense reduction. That's really good. The skill damage taken debuff is, of course, really fantastic. Every single turn when you have this skill maxed, you are deploying poison onto the target. So you love to see that. I mean, what does this mean in terms of how fast you could generate poison stacks? Well, let's talk about this. So in a 13-second window, which is the window of time in which we would expect Hermann Prime to use that fourth skill, do his instant AoE damage, hitting 3 targets, 200 damage factor, and potentially 6 stacks of poison, right? If I'm understanding this correctly, in one skill cycle, you could get 9 stacks of poison on the active skill, all right? You get 6 stacks of poison from that instant proc damage, so you're up to 15 stacks of poison. And then, if it's been 10 seconds, right, Tommy has deployed 10 stacks of poison, 1 stack every second, which means you're going to get a free activation of an active skill. So a free activation of an active skill, like somewhere in the realm of every 10 to 13 seconds is it's pretty damn good, right? Like and it could be faster, obviously. The faster your skill cycle goes, the more you're doing AoE damage. Like the only thing that doesn't accelerate is the instant proc damage. So, look, I think Tommy's going to be really good. I actually think, and I love this design. I love when new commanders come out that make old commanders good. That is the jam. That is actually the jam. Like Constantine was good. He's a really good garrison. And I feel like they're bringing Tommy back in like the weirdest, most awesome way. We'll have to test and see, but like Tommy also makes it so she gets 10% attack on the expertise, deals 10% more counterattack damage. And whenever they're hit with a basic attack, cavalry units lose 10% attack until they stop attacking her. All right, cool. But here's the real icing on the cake. So we know that now you get museum buffs, and the museum buff for Tommy is available, and that museum buff is wicked. It's actually so good. It's all the way to the right. Tommy, 15% health and 10% march speed. Bro, it's what Tommy needed. So I think that, like, unironically, Hermann Prime Tommy could be very good moving into this new understanding of the world. So that would mean that you use Zhuge Liang and Boudica Prime together. You use Hermann Prime and Tommy, and like that's an amazing set of combinations. Alternatively, maybe you don't use Tommy, and like Nebu is still going to be great. I feel like all the archers that are good today, Henry is still going to be really good. Like Hermann Prime does not necessitate pairing with Tommy. It's just an option. And if you're the kind of player who's been bringing 3 archer marches to the open field, I feel like you're going to be super rewarded in this new meta that's about to show up. I mean, archer players should be over the freaking moon hyped over this. And like I said, Baba brought in Tommy when he fought against Leopard 7v7 in a really heated duel. Of a card in the end screen, if you want to see that, that was a secret technology to eke out the wins. And like, it worked. You pop targets with Tommy. It's very good in the field. The only downside of Tommy in the open field is that she's doing single target damage, and we have like really left the window where you want commanders doing single target damage. But there are still plenty of people using plenty of single target damage commanders. I mean, you see 1960, for example, potentially advocating for Tariq ibn Ziyad in the open field, right? And he does big damage. Like, there's no one doubting that he does good damage. But like, what I'm trying to say is there's still room for single target damage commanders. And with a debuff as potent as what Tommy is doing, with her damage getting elevated to an upwards of 1800 damage factor, it's not going to be that all the time. I mean, I don't know. It could be that we look at what Tommy is doing and we say, yeah, you'd rather just not clear off the poison, and Tommy sits on the bench. But I feel like for people that have Tommy, she could now have a really cool use. And the other thing that I find so elegant about this potential design is that the issue I have been saying for like years now is that early game commanders are a waste of sculptures. You put your sculptures into an early game commander and then you get to the late game and you're like, sorry, broski, but they're worthless. And I'm not trying to be mean, or it's just like, look, you compare Alexander the Great to Skippy Prime and it's not the same universe of power level, right? But if the developers are going in and strategically making relevant endgame pairings for early commanders with late commanders, I think that is such elegant design. I can't believe it's actually taken us this long to get to this solution, but that is a clean solution if that's what they're doing. And I would bet you money that it is intentional, that that's what they're doing, which is really cool. So anyways, I am really hyped for Hermann Prime. A big thank you again to the Mountain Man, who was literally the first person to get me this information. Super freaking goated. Anytime information like this drops and you think it's official, please do message me, folks, on Discord. I deeply appreciate it. Smash a like on the video. If you want to see, as I was describing, the duel where Baba brought in Tommy, and that was the secret tech, Carl be in the end screen. I mean, seeing is believing. And that was like a year ago or so, maybe half a year ago when that happened. Like, it was good then before the museum buff was even here. Now it's really good. Okay. Yeah. Check out those cards in the end screen. I think you'll find them enlightening. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.